That is probably one of the most like profound things that a guest has said that
Cool.
actually speaks to me, man. Because that's like a really big one that I struggle with.
So I developed this concept, or really named already concept out in the world, like I say, and invented it, called a maximum recoverable volume. And it's just a theoretical nod, like hat tip or milady, to the idea that your body's ability to recover from training is finite at any one given point. Now, it changes over time and stuff like that. But there's a certain amount of training you cannot throw at your body because it will exceed its ability to recover. And at that point, you do that chronically, you're engineering an environment where you don't get gains, you get losses. I used to wrestle, for example. And there was a saying in wrestling when I was coming up that was like, however hard your opponent is working, you outwork them. And like later I examined that through a more scientific lens. It's like, what if my opponent is working almost to their limits of recovery? Let's say we have similar limits. And I work 1.5 times harder. Won't I be going beyond my own ability to recover? Yes. Is that a good thing? No. Like if you have an office building, which people can fix at a certain rate, and it's in a storm, windows getting broken, blinds flying out. If the storm is gnarly enough and the workers can't keep up, the office building just degrades more and more until it's useless. You can, in fact, do that to your muscles. You can do that to your whole body. You're from the ultra running world. People overtrain. That's a real thing. If someone in the ultra running community told you, yeah, man, just trying to get as many miles as possible, you'd be like, what? You must just not go that hard, because at some point your body's like, nope, you got to take some light days or the knees are coming off, the ankles are going to break apart, the whole thing goes. Your performance, your VO2 max can dip down in an overtrained state.
After today's video, I popped a link down below for Thrive Market. Now that is an online membership-based grocery store, and that is a 30% off discount link and a $60 free gift when you use that special link down below. So think about being able to walk into a grocery store and immediately narrow down what you want. You want sugar-free, you want high protein, you want this. You can use these filters and shop for whatever you want. Plus, I also have my own signature products that I've created with Thrive Market. I've created some low-carb keto truffles that are sweetened with allulose. I've created nut butters that are sweetened with allulose, so like these dessert butters. I've linked out to them down below as well. But you can also just go to Thrive Market and you can search for like Thomas DeLauer nut butters or Thomas DeLauer low-carb truffles, whatever. Anyhow, that link down below saves you 30% off your entire first grocery order and a free $60 gift. So if you're shopping, you're getting groceries for yourself, you've got to check them out. And they've been a big supporter of this channel for over half a decade. So thank you to them and thank you to you.
So MRV is a real thing. Maximum recoverable volume is a testament to the fact that you can do up to an amount that you can't recover from, and anything north of that, don't do. Now, on the other hand, there's the minimum effective volume of if you don't do at least this much work, this number of sets per week for biceps, for example, you just won't get any gains. So all good training, all gains by definition, theoretically happen between your minimum effective volume and maximum recoverable. Even before this introduction of concepts, but definitely after, people have been very curious about roughly for the average person who trains, what does a minimum effective number look like? Is it 1 set per week for biceps? Probably not for advanced people. Is it 10 sets per week for biceps? That seems more reasonable, but maybe even that's a little bit high. What is the MRV though? What's the maximum recoverable? If I want big legs, I come to you and I'm like, Thomas, look, my legs are small. My girlfriend just left me. She laughed at me while she walked off, and I couldn't even run after her because my legs are so small. And I'm like, what do I do? You're going to be like, well, yeah, I should probably train your legs more. And then I go, how much more? Now, what you say to me after that can matter, because if you say, look, in my experience, 15 sets of quads a week, nobody can recover from any more than that. And you cap me at 15. What if I'm really slow twitch muscle fiber? What if I'm really just genetically amazing at recovery? What if I'm not that big and strong? And like, it just doesn't take many days for me to recover. Like you take Ronnie Coleman, you have him do some squats. He takes so much total muscle damage because of squats.
Now.
It's up. I should have used somebody else. Time machine to 2001. Ronnie Coleman does squats. He gets really, really sore because there's a lot to get sore, a lot of recovery to do. But if you got pencil neck McGeekstein and his quads are like Harry Potter size, he might be able to just recover a lot. You tell him 15 is the most you should do. He's doing 15 sets of quads regularly. 3 times a week, he does 5 sets of quads. You're like, dude, how is it? He's like, yeah, it's pretty good. You getting sore? He's like, not really. Like, do you think you could do more and still recover? He's like, dude, for sure, I could double this and still recover. You're like, No, man, that's too much. So back in the day, that's kind of what we used to do. It was more of a colloquial understanding. Like, you see in the gym what works and what doesn't. And that understanding was biased by very strong, very muscular, very fast twitch people who happen to dominate bodybuilding, oftentimes with very good technique. When you use very good technique and you're genetically pretty gifted and you're enormous, you're going to be able to pound in so much stimulus per every rep. You just don't need a lot of sets to get the job done. And many more sets than that is just overkill. My MRV for my quads is sure shit not 20 sets per week. I would die. I might be 12 to 15 is my limit. Is that the case for everyone else? So what I used to think was roughly maximum recoverable volumes for most muscles are something like 20 sets per muscle per week. Any much more than that, and you're getting into the problem area of like you're over your maximum recoverable volume, which means by definition, you're starting to overreach, then overtrain, and then you lose muscle, then your joints are all f***ed up and you're just washed out. It turns out there's a huge exception to that. They have done a crap load of studies now where they've taken groups of people, able-bodied young men, that they give a certain amount of training to, let's say 20 sets per week. And then next week they go up and then up and then up, and they just keep going. And there's at least one study so far that it took lifters up to 52 sets of quads per week. 52 work sets per week. You're like, what? Here's the thing. It turns out that the systemic limit to maximum recoverable volume is a real thing. You can only train your whole body so much, and systemically it'll be like, dude, I need a break. You, I can't grow anymore. Get me out of here. But the local limit of each muscle is actually quite high relative to that. So here's what I mean by that. If you train your whole body and you're well trained, you take a few muscles beyond 20 or 25 sets per week, it's not the muscles themselves getting up too much. The systemic fatigue is so high, your body's like, dude, I can't do this. You'll start to get a lower desire to train. Your whole body's joints will start hurting, sleep problems. And if you pull back on that volume, everything gets better. And you're like, okay, I was just clearly doing too much. But if you train a lot of your body's musculature very little or not at all, let's say you're doing no upper body training, just legs, all of a sudden your local maximum recoverable volumes are exposed for your legs. Like, what's pushing the quads too hard? And it turns out that answer for most muscles, for many people, is more like 30 or 40 or 50 sets per week than 10 to 20. So that advice that you give to that kid whose girlfriend left him because his quads were small is now going to be quite different. He's going to say, dude, I'll do anything to get bigger legs. You go, okay, take your upper body training volume, lower it to 1/3 of what it used to be, which is now a generally understood rough guess at what maintenance volume is. So if you train with 15 sets for your chest per week to grow it, if you do just 5 sets per week, you'll almost certainly never lose chest volume until you turn like 80 and you're just dying, I guess. No offense, 80-year-olds. You have maybe many listeners who are 80 of this podcast.
That's my demographic. Can you tell?
Okay. You look great for your age, by the way. Like, I'm actually a vampire. I'm 105.
People, ever since I had kids, it was like after having, I don't think people realized I was pretty young when I started the channel. So like now when I actually look my age and I have kids, people are like, you're so old. You look so unhealthy.
Oh my God.
I can't believe how much you've aged. Well,
Ruthless. Like, yes, it's been 15 years. Try having kids, damn it. So that kid that comes to you and says, I'll do anything for quads, you put him on 5 sets of everything. Upper body, all 5 sets instead of the 15 he used to do. And now you say, look, start at 15 sets of quads per week. And if you feel good and recovered, you're not sore when it's time to train again, add 1 or 2 sets every workout to your quad workout. After a few months, he might be into the 30s and 40s of quad working sets and growing better than he would have at 15. Because when you take the systemic demands and you clear out some room, it turns out you can really jam per 1 unit muscle. So if you have a muscle, here's the big take-home point. If you have a muscle that you really want to grow and you haven't trained it with more than 20, 25, 30, 35 work sets per week, take some of the muscles in your body, lower them down to maintenance volume, do 1/3 of the normal training you do for them, and start slowly gassing that muscle up. You can do this with 1, maybe 2 muscles at the same time. You can get up to really high volumes, 25, 30, 35, 40 sets per week for some time until you deload, and that will confer significantly more hypertrophy than if you just stayed at 15 to 20 sets per week and you're like, guess I'm just never getting big arms. You could get much bigger arms if you really put in the work, but you have to constrain the rest of your body and listen to the signs of your recovery. If your arms are sore all the time and they never get a chance to heal, it's too much volume. If your elbows start to hurt, it's too much volume, and so on and so forth.
That's wild, man. So, I mean, what's most intriguing to me is, I mean, you can really back down the volume once you already have that clay mass kind of built. I mean, you can,
Huge.
Yeah, because that's me. It's like I go back and forth between like running so much, so then it's the leg volume is harder because I'm running, because I'm not recovered, because I've got this constant eccentric of running.
Oh
so
my
then
God!
I try to squat the next day, and it's just not happening.
Sure.
So I'm like, okay, I got to wait 2 days. Okay, then I squat, and then I can't run.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, my volume goes to crap.
Yes.
But I'm like, okay, well, I've got a brand to uphold. I got to look a certain way. Sure. But ideally, I'd be like, shoot, let me just hit a few sets of upper body, keep what I got, and like hammer the legs and just creep up that volume as much as I can.
That is absolutely how it works. I highly recommend you try it. Yeah. Cut your typical volume in lifting by a third. Stick with that for a few weeks or months while you really emphasize running. Get a lot better at your running game. And then you can always flip the script. You think, okay, I kind of miss lifting a little bit. I'm looking kind of like I usually look, but I could look a little better. I've finished, let's say you run a race, you finish your running goals. You know, like how it works. You got to take a few weeks of easier running anyway. Take the load off your hips, your knees, etc. You say, okay, for the next 2 months, I'm going to run at maintenance, which means I'm going to run roughly 1/3 of the total volume I typically run, which is a lot less, meaningfully less. And if you keep the runs pretty intense, you won't lose much of your running ability. Transiently, it'll go down a little bit, but it comes right back up when you start training a lot again. And then when you lower your running like that for a few months, raise your lifting a lot by, up by a third and then up by a third. And then you can get a lot of short-term gains that you can keep into that next phase, cycling the phases one after another. A few weeks of months of more lifting, less running, a few weeks of months of the opposite gets you a lot of the big green check marks of all of them, but you're at least a little bit of a specialist some of the time.
No, that's awesome. Does the sort of systemic recovery you talk about apply to like aerobic threshold training, LT1, LT2 as well? So, because
yes.
Okay, because I find like the instance of like URIs and like just getting respiratory issues when I'm running goes up so effing fast. It's not even funny because like we train together. I push it pretty hard. So I think that way when I'm running too, and I don't really understand sometimes that I'm pushing it too hard until I'm sick, right?
Yes.
So it's like. So they dip from the same bucket essentially. So like even if I'm running and lifting, that's systemic, but then maybe the localized operates on a different axis.
I couldn't have put it better.
Yeah.
I mean, my voice is a little sexier, so I could have, but other than that, I'm kidding. There's nothing about me more sexy than you. Do you typically get hit on by your guests?
Not like you. Yeah,
that's what they all say.
You're first for me.
Gross.
I did have one, and
as a joke or for real?
No, for real. And they're not allowed back here.
Oh my God. Were you fellas in here?
Everyone knows this one.
Thomas is like, help me. They're just like, nope,
pretty much,
camera works well. Keep
exactly
going. You're the man. You're all on your own out here. That's really funny. No. Yeah. The systemic fatigue adds up from all sources. Another really cool thing is one of the things that leaks into systemic fatigue is overall life stress. Like your significant other yells at you. She says, I'm taking the kids forever. Typical Tuesday kind of stuff. And that stress can actually fill your cup of systemic fatigue. So where you go on your normal run after that, you get sick because you've exceeded your systemic fatigue abilities. Now, of course, you don't always get sick after, but you absolutely run a higher risk of getting an infection of some sort because your immune system is like a sword and shield army. It's busy fighting the volume, and behind it, it's this like whatever typical virus. It sneaks up back there, so you're absolutely at risk for getting more sick and having lower performances, even if the stressors that come in aren't workout related. So it's cardio, it's weights, it's combat sport, it's the tennis you play with grandma on Saturdays, and it's like your boss yelling at you at work. That all adds up. So sometimes if you have a big sprint, let's say you're doing some kind of work project and it's like night and day, you got to get it done. Take your training, lower it to maintenance volume. You will thank yourself. Because another thing that people get really wrong is they have this dichotomy of either I'm off, like I'm in the Bahamas, my butlers are smoking cigarettes for me because I don't want that smoke to touch my body, but I got to look cool for Instagram, and I just don't do it. Or I'm out here 110% fucking running on the freeway, hitting semis. The thing is, if you, during tough times, take your training down to about a third, you essentially lose nothing. And when you pick back up the next week, when the work project is over, oh, thank God, you can start ramping up your training like nothing ever happened. If you don't do that, if you're like, well, I'm still at work, I'm still going to train like crazy, you're just going to get sick halfway through that week. The work project is going to be tough to finish. You'll have to cut all of your training out for a week and a half and do that thing where you come back after a week and a half of no training at all. And you're like, the hell am I even capable of here? You have to start rediscovering your body. You can avoid that if you just proactively adjust volumes up and down, recognizing the tacit fact that, yes, the total systemic recovery ability is limited. It's trainable. It goes up over time, but it's limited at any one time. And a lot of people don't have an intuition built around that, I would say. Me too. I do dumb all the time. Forget about shit.
No, it's hard, man. I mean, especially if you're wired just to push it, right? I mean, that's just like, it's a really difficult thing to do. And when 100%. You're looking at like the life stressors kind of adding up on you, I mean, sometimes you're probably like me where I'm training as an outlet for those life stressors. So it's like
a challenge. It's like life. I'll life and I'll do my training. Yeah. I'm that hardcore. And it's like, God's not giving out hardcore trophies up there. Maybe he is. That's in a few years. While you're in this terrestrial existence, your body is a machine. It has a physical limits. You don't want to exceed them, and you want to know them. You want to push them for sure. But if you know there's just going to be too much in the situation, too much outside stress, too much cardio, too much training, my question to people listening is, what do you think comes out of that magic box when you excessively stimulate a system with too much stress? The answer is injury, sickness, or just having a bad time where you regress in your abilities even though you've done more work. Imagine this scenario. You cut everything down by a third. You lose nothing. You're at the end of the week. You start again. Amazing. Imagine the other scenario of you stick with the program and everything. I'm going to run. I'm going to lift. I'm going to do these YouTube projects. And at the end of that week, you're physically sick and your ankle hurts. Which one of those is better? Which one were you the tougher guy for choosing? Of course, the one where you worked all the way through. But your reward for being a tough guy is you have an upper respiratory tract infection and your ankle hurts so much you can't run on it. Slow clap. Yeah. You did it. Hardcore, hashtag no team, no days off. And you'll have plenty of time for hashtagging because you'll be on your couch Instagramming instead of being out in the world doing it. Yeah. But if you willfully pull back, it's a decent analogy, I think, with no disrespect meant to folks actually fighting in combat. But you're an intelligent commander. You pull back your forces when it's time. You're not like, we're going to take this whole city. And they're like, well, if we just let these guys run out of ammo for a while, we don't have to rush into there. Nope, we're going to rush in. But we're going to lose a ton of guys. Why would we do that? It's just not smart. Smart leaders, smart military planners, even when they have huge, powerful armies, they push in, they pull back, they push in, they pull back. But us idiots are sitting there man, hashtag hardcore. I never pull back. I used to say I never pull out, but the alimony just got real gnarly. I'm just
on that note,
I've never been with a woman.
That was not this very, very, very last chunk, but this whole last chunk. Your last thing you changed your mind on. That is probably one of the most profound things that a guest has said that actually speaks to me, man. Because that's a really big one that I struggle with, is trying to find that range between that minimum effective dose and what do you call it? Maximum recoverable volume?
Yeah, minimum effective volume, maximum recoverable volume.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's finding that sweet spot is, and also coming to terms with the fact that might be a very bio-individual thing. It might just be
hugely individual.
Okay with the fact. In fact, I mean, in the world of efficiency, it's kind of a freaking bonus if I can actually get by with less, right? If I'm efficient and it means that I can get the same performance outcome with less, then screw you. I actually can do it quicker.
It's amazing. Yeah. At the end of the day, training can be used for two things. One is getting results. Two is sharpening your toughness. What we want ideally is for that second thing never to interfere with the first. You can get plenty tough by training smart, by training strategically, by training knowing you have limits, and get a ton of hardcore mental work. But if you're man, hashtag never quit, it's dope. You're going really hard, but then you're paying for it. There's guys in jiu-jitsu, for example, I do jiu-jitsu. There's guys that can't turn down their rolls. When they do live rolling, live training, they can't switch down to a notch. And those are usually the guys that are hurt all the time. Yeah, man, my elbow. And then they'll be yeah, man, when I roll, it's 100%. I can tell, you idiot. You would have a functioning elbow if that wasn't the case, and you would get more time on the mat and you would be better at jiu-jitsu. So do you come to jiu-jitsu to get better at beating people up, or do you come to cleanse your mind of demons? You can have both, but don't let the demon cleansing over your periodization. So if you have to lift and run to feel like a decent human being, make sure those are in a state of balance. You're not just doing a crap load of them all the time, because you just have inexplicable injuries and times you get sick. And then people maybe people close to you are I thought you knew what you were doing with all this stuff. Why are you sick all the time? And then you're like, because I push it hard, damn it. You won't understand. You know that whole meme where no one at the party talks to me, so I talk to myself? That's you, and just getting hurt all the time for no reason at all.
Yeah, that's been me before, for sure.
It's been me my whole life.
Yeah.